Call the roll if we are all set. Tate?
Here.
Rogers?
Connected.
Oh,
Rogers?
In Eldorado room.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Kasuga? Kasuga?
Here.
Cervantes? Fu? Sheets?
Here.
Nystrom?
Here.
Phillips? Riscate?
Here.
Okay, we've got a quorum.
Thank you so much. As we're diving into the afternoon, again, 3 o'clock is when, in my head, my goal, my objective is to end open session at 3 o'clock. And so we're going to move that direction. And we are going to resume with Dr. Cervantes on agenda item 13B5. I think I'm correct. Dr. Cervantes.
Yes, you're correct, Dr. Tate. Thank you. So this item is AB 996 by LOC, Department of Consumer Affairs Continuing Education Conflict of Interest Policy. This item begins on page 755 of the combined packet. Our board currently has an opposed position, and it was recently moved to inactive status. There is no action on this item. This is only informational. If there's no board comment, I'll move on to item 6. Item 6 is SB 372, Menjivar, Department of Consumer Affairs, Licensee and Registrant Records, Name and Gender Changes. This item begins on page 764 of the combined packet. The Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee recommends that the board remove its opposition and continue to watch this bill. Mr. Pope?
Yes, thank you. On May 31st, the board met with DCA, the author's office, sponsors, and the other affected boards to discuss possible amendments. The DCA proposed technical amendments to address most of the board's concerns with SB 372. On June 12th, the bill was amended to include DCA's proposed amendments, which narrowed the scope to who this would apply to and allows the board to set up a process to let stakeholders know if there's enforcement or discipline on the public website that would direct them to contact the board directly to attain the enforcement information. Currently, SB 372 is in the Assembly and has passed the Committee on Appropriations with 14 yes votes and 4 no votes. And at this time, staff is continuing to monitor the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Pope.
Position.
Second.
Okay.
This is Dr. Kasuga.
Fu and Kasuga. Okay, thank you. There's a motion to remove the board's opposition to SB 372. It's been moved by Mr. Fu and second by Dr. Kasuga. Is there any board discussion on this item?
Actually, Dr. Cervantes, I'm wondering if Mr. Fu would consider not just removing opposition, but also providing support for this bill, since our initial concerns have been addressed.
I would be absolutely supportive of that. I was, I think, originally one of the no votes for our opposed position, or at least I was, I think, at that time trying to persuade our colleagues to take a less stringent position. So I'm more than happy to offer a substitute motion that expresses our support for this bill.
And I will second that.
And you concur? Thank you, Dr. Kasuga. Is there any other board comment? Ms. Riscate?
Sorry, that was Dr. Kasuga accidentally hit the hand.
Oh. Okay, is there another comment? It's cool if there is. Okay, seeing no further board comment, can we open public comment?
We are now open for public comment on the motion for 13B6, this Senate Bill 372. If you would like to make a comment on the motion, the amended motion, please raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you are a dial-in user, you will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. And it looks like our first request for comment comes from Jen Alley. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good afternoon again. I hope everybody enjoyed their break. This is Jennifer Alley with the California Psychological Association. Very appreciative of the board's reconsideration of their position. CPA is one of the proud co-sponsors for this very important legislation that will help protect the privacy of individuals that have transitioned and are licensed under a board under the Department of Consumer Affairs. We really appreciate the work of BOP staff and the DCA meeting, and again, thankful for your discussion and change.
Thank you. And next we'll be calling on Andrea Davis. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, it's Dr. Andrea Davis, licensed psychologist. I'm very happy the board is moving to change their position on this bill, and I think it's just an important step forward for privacy for those who've changed their names. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hold on just a moment. Next, we're going to call on Dr. Marilyn Amuse. Bear with us just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
This is Dr. Marilyn Imos from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I would like to reiterate our thanks for the discussion that preceded the change in the board's position, and also thank you for just the great collaboration and the ability to be able to talk about some of these sensitive issues. We're very pleased at CDCR with the current situation, and we would support also that this bill be supported.
Thank you. Making one last check. Dr. Amuse, did you want to say something more?
Actually not. I was trying to put my hand down. I'm sorry, I'm not very well coordinated. I broke that wrist, so I'm still working with it.
No worries.
Thank you. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. And this is actually very much in line with CDCR policy to protect this particular cohort. So we're very happy with the result. Thank you. And now I'll try to put, oh, my hand is down now.
I've got your hand this time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Was that the last comment?
That is the last comment. We are ready to proceed with the motion.
Thank you. So our motion is to change the board's opposition to support for SB 372. It was moved by Mr. Fu and second by Dr. Kasuga. Ms. Prato, can we call the vote?
Kasuga. Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harp Sheets. Nystrom is recusing herself. Phillips.
Aye.
Scotty.
Aye.
Rogers. Aye. Tate. Thank you.
The motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, staff and board members and our stakeholders for the thoughtful discussion on this bill over the last few months. Item number 7, SB 544, Laird, Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act teleconferencing. This item begins on page 784 of the combined packet. The Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee recommends that the board support SB 544 if amended to remove certain provisions beginning on page 786. Mr. Polk.
Yes, thank you. SB 544 is currently in Assembly and was referred to the Committee on Appropriations. This bill would amend the existing law, which would allow state bodies to hold public meetings through teleconferencing with specified notice and accessibility requirements. The public would have to be given the teleconference number, website, or other online platforms to access the meeting, and at least one member of the state body must be present at the specified location. Additionally, the bill provides access for people with disabilities and requires state bodies to disclose if any other individuals 18 years of age or older are present at the remote location of the meeting. This bill was amended on this past Monday on August 14th. These amendments would require a majority of the members to be physically present at the same location for at least half of the meetings. The new amendments do not appear to have an operational impact, as the board holds at least 2 virtual meetings and 2 in-person meetings with quorum per year. There are the 2 main concerns regarding SB 544. The first is related to the provision regarding the requirement to end the meeting if there is technical issues. The board has had this occur most recently in the February board meeting. However, the meeting was able to continue even with the experienced technical issues. But however, under this provision, the meeting would have to be adjourned. This may lead, if the provision continues or is it written into law, this may lead to additional costs for petitioners who would then have to be required to travel to a separate scheduled meeting location. Additional costs related to the petition hearings would be accrued, and for the licensed board members would need to reschedule additional time off to attend the meeting or the rescheduled meeting, which may result in some loss of revenue. The second concern is related to the disclosure of any individual who is 18 years or older that is present at the remote location. Members who are calling from the office may have to disclose other practitioners who are present or possible clients' information, which may impact the HIPAA guidelines. So with the information and just reiterating with the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee, there's a recommendation to support if amended to remove the provisions regarding meeting adjournment due to technical issues or the disclosure of any individual 18 years or older.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Is there a motion to support SB 544 if amended?
Dr. Harb Sheets to support SB 544 if amended as specified in the documents.
And I'll second that, Ms. Dr. Tate.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Harb Sheets and Dr. Tate. So the motion is to support SB 544 if amended to address 2 provisions. One is ending the meeting abruptly if there's a tech issue. And second is with disclosing if there are individuals under 18 present in the room. The motion was moved by Dr. Harb Sheets and second by Dr. Tate. Is there any board discussion? I see none. Can we open for public comment?
In public comment on 13B7. This is Senate Bill 544. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the lower part of your screen. Dial-in users must dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. And our first request comes from Dr. Marilyn Amuz. Hold on. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
That's good. Okay. Yes, thank you for, again, allowing the public to speak, I just would like to suggest, I'm from the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We also have trends and telecommuting trends in our own organization that are fairly successful. We've had a lot of changes in this area, and I would like to speak out for support of this bill as modified, suggested, also in the name of our organization.
Thank you. I'll get your hand.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, that is our only request for comment at the moment. Do you wish to continue with the motion?
We'll continue. The motion is on the floor is to support SB 5444 if amended on two provisions, one requiring ending the meeting if there's a tech issue, and the second disclosing if there are persons under the age of 18 in the room. The motion was made by Dr. Harf-Sheets and second by Dr. Tate. If there's no further board comment, Ms. Pruteau, can you call the roll?
Kasuga. Fontes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harf-Sheets. Phillips.
Aye.
Scott-Tay.
Aye.
Rogers. Aye. Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion carries. The next item is 13B number 8. It's SB 815, Roth Healing Arts. This item begins on page 799 of the combined packet. Our current position is to support if amended. The bill has been amended and staff recommends a change in our position to support. Mr. Polk?
Yes, thank you. Board staff met with medical board staff and at that time requested delayed implementation until January 1st of 2025. On July 11th, the bill was amended to include the board's proposed amendment for delayed implementation. Board staff has provided in-person testimony on SB 815 as the bill was referred to the Assembly Committee on Appropriations. However, the bill currently has the initial registration and renewal fees lower than the current fees for research psychoanalysts. The bill currently has the fee listed as $100 for the registration fee and $50 for the renewal fee. The current law has the fees listed as $150 for registration and $75 for renewal. Board staff has flagged the fee discrepancy and consulted with medical board staff and the legislative staff to amend the bill back to the original fees. And it's our understanding that this matter will be addressed in the upcoming amendments to the bill. So currently SB 15 is in the Assembly and was referred to the Committee on Appropriations. However, that hearing for SB 815 has been postponed. So since the bill has been amended to include the delayed implementation, it's a recommendation that the board take the position of support.
Do you still recommend the position of support, Mr. Polk, if this fee situation is not addressed yet in the bill?
Is my understanding that, yeah, we would still consider as a support position. We are working closely with the legislative staff and as well as the medical board staff to get the fees corrected before it goes into law.
Sheets. I would feel comfortable with the support if amended until we see the fees changed in writing.
Is that a motion?
Yes, that's a motion. I was just thinking, yes, it's a motion. Support
I second
amended.
I second the motion.
Okay.
You guys caught me taking notes. Okay, so there is a motion on the floor to change the board's. Actually, are we changing our position, we're right now with support if amended.
But it was amendment was different, and this time the amendment would be about the fees and not the previous concerns.
So the motion, let's see if I can reiterate this in the right order. The motion is to change the board's position from support if amended, given the changes that
It changed the board's position from support if amended to change the implementation date to support if amended with the updated fees.
Okay, everybody got what Dr. Harvey said?
And that was the understanding of the second.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Is there any board comment on this motion?
And I do have a board question. So this is perhaps better suited for staff, which is Mr. Polk, with regard to the restoration of the fees back to its original level, is the original fee structure consistent with the actual cost recovery for the Board of Psychology, given the fact that I think we have a separate effort to restructure our fees via legislation?
I can try to take a stab at this one. This is Antoinette. So the original fees that were in the statute, it was my understanding it was an inadvertent change in talking to the committee staff. So the goal is to change it back to its original fees so that once it transfers over to us, there's, for the cost of doing the registration process as the medical board is doing right now, there's no change to that. In addition, we have the 1 year ramp up where with the medical board sunset provision being effective January 1, 2024, the actual movement to our program wouldn't happen until January 1, 2025, which was our original support if amended suggested amendment. So once those fees go back, it should be a cost neutral issue for us. Now, looking forward to the future, if the board makes any changes to that registration process, to the oversight or regulation of the profession, there may be additional costs incurred with those future things. But I'm hoping that somewhat answers your question.
So
thank you so much, Ms. Sorek.
Sorek,
No
you're
problem.
saying now this the fees, as we are asking that they be brought back to, would be acceptable when considering our costs, our board costs.
Yeah, the fees as they are in current law is what the medical board is able to sustain to run the program. So it would just be transferring over to our program. And we would have, we have asked for a staff member to be able to run that program as part of what they call a legislative budget change proposal, which is kind of a fast track ask for a request for staffing to support any kind of new program. So we didn't ask for that with the psychological testing technicians, because at the time we had just gotten rid of registered psychologist category. So it was a cost neutral savings with the number of registrants leaving versus coming in. So this is, because it's an additional program, we would have that infrastructure and support. And like I said, and then if anything about the oversight or regulation of that profession were to make changes, then we would have to quantify that and consider what that fee looks like at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Sora, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you were to hire an AGPA, an assistant. I always forget what these things stand for. An AGPA, anyway, to administer, to do the background research and to see if there are any regulations that need to be changed and so on and so forth. Given that there are 60 to 80 registered registered research analysts in the state, is that going to work out financially?
I think that's what this next year coming up will help inform our thoughts on that. And that's why we asked for the additional ramp up time, because we're going to have to spend some time with the medical board staff to find out what all goes into the renewal process, the initial registration process. It's our understanding that there are very few new registrations each year. It's something like 2 or 3. And then it's a biannual renewal for the registration itself. So I think that year will give us some time to better understand the time, the workload, and the paperwork, and modify, applications, build the infrastructure in Breeze. And Ms. Chung will be very instrumental in helping along with that process, as well as Ms. Zong. So,
is there any thought of having an ad hoc committee to look at the question of the regulations?
I think that's definitely something that we will have to talk about and consider. And if you are volunteering, I will make sure and write a note to follow up with Dr. Tate as we look at this issue going forward. And I appreciate your anticipated interest.
You've already strong-armed me on this before, so.
Third was volunteer and Dr. Phillips, so that's great.
Yeah. It's fine.
Your insight is very valuable.
I'm interested in it, and I come from the psychoanalytic community, so I think it would make sense. And I already know a lot about research psychoanalysts, so I'm probably a logical choice.
And if you need a public member, I'm happy to serve with Dr. Phillips on that ad hoc committee.
We make a great team.
If we work in tandem, as the song famously goes.
Thank you both.
Sounds great.
Is there, Mr. Fu, do you have another comment?
Your hands up, Seiran.
No, it was my original comment question that Ms. Ork answered. Thank you. Which apparently then involved me getting onto a committee.
I know we're short on time, so I'm just trying to keep us moving here. So we have possible follow-up action items, which is good. I see no other board comments, so let's open public comment.
We are now accepting public comment on 13B8, Senate Bill 815. And if you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. And it does not appear that we have any requests for comment at the moment. Do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you. So our motion is to change the board's position from support if amended on the implementation date to support if amended to address fees It was moved by Dr. Harpsheets and second by Dr. Phillips. Seeing no other board comment, Ms. Pruitt, can you call the vote?
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Who?
Aye.
Harpsheets. Nystrom. Sorry, it's recused. Thank you. Phillips.
Aye.
Rescate.
Aye.
Rogers. Aye. Tate. Thank you.
The motion carries. Thank you. We're moving on to item 13C. These are our watch bills. This item is mostly informational. The status of each bill can be found in the board meeting materials in the combined packet beginning on page 885. We will discuss SB 805 unless any of the board members would like to discuss any other bill. Is there any other bill? So let's move to item 13C7. That's SB 805, Portantino Healthcare Coverage, Pervasive Development Disorders or Autism. This item begins on page 965 of the combined packet. And we also, did we get the hand carry item on this one?
No, this is Assistant Executive Officer John Burke. So we don't have a hand carry item.
Okay, Mr. Burke, are you going to give us an update on this?
I'd ask Mr. Polk to kind of give an intro to what the bill currently is, and then I'll talk briefly after him. That's all right, Mr. Polk?
Sounds good. Mr. Polk?
Yes, thank you. So this bill would expand the criteria for a qualified autism service professional to include a behavioral health professional, a psychology, registered psychological associate. There is a issue with the term. They do have it listed currently as psychology associate, but we are providing technical assistance on that. An associate marriage and family therapist, associate clinical social worker, or associate professional clinical counselor. The bill would expand the criteria for the qualified autism special paraprofessional as well. In recent proposed amendments, the regulations adopted by the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS, would apply to mostly to insurance and reimbursement of services of the professionals or paraprofessionals. DDS would prior to the amendments, DDS would have been required to adopt emergency regulations to address the use of behavioral health professionals and paraprofessionals, and would have required DDS to establish the educational or experience qualifications and professional supervision requirements necessary for these positions. But as stated, their new proposed amendments are changing that to where it's now focusing more on insurance and reimbursement. Just a status update, currently SB 805 is in the Assembly and has been referred to the Committee on Appropriations, and we are continuing to monitor SB 805. And with that, there is a staff recommendation that the board just continue to watch the bill and provide technical assistance as needed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there anything else to add, Mr. Burke?
Yeah, I just wanted to add just a touch more background. This bill was one we were aware of on sort of our internal tracking matrix, but it really has to do with people getting reimbursement via DDS. And that's why it didn't rise to this level. However, some the stakeholders, I believe the primary sponsors, as well as California Psychological Association, called a meeting with staff to discuss this with us. And at the time, we raised our technical issue in that our registered psychological associates are misnamed in the legislation. And we said, okay, well, you have concerns. We have one technical amendment to propose, so we'll put it on the agenda. And I'm sure they'll speak for themselves in the public comment section after this. After that meeting, I had a conversation with DCA's legislative office, and they explained to me that they have been having conversations with DDS about this bill, again, providing technical support. But as their understanding is that this focus and thrust of the legislation and any kind of regulations the DDS would put together would be related to how you would get reimbursement for providing these services in those settings, which really is a DDS matter. So that's that. And then the hand carry, which Dr. Cervantes alluded to, are they're drafted amendments. They've not been put in yet, so that's why they've not been shared. They're still being discussed by various stakeholders, the sponsor, DDS and DCA, and I believe there's now being discussions with the office, Senator Portantino's office. So that's a bit more background as to sort of where it is now and the conversations we've been having around it. That's all I have to say at this time. So I'll hand it back over to you, Dr. Cervantes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt a watch position for SB 805?
I'm happy to make a motion.
Is this Dr. Kasuga?
This is Dr. Kasuga.
Okay. And Mr. Fu wanted a second?
No, my question was that isn't this bill already on the watch list?
We haven't adopted a position on this one.
Already on the watch list. That's correct.
Yes. Oh.
And so it wasn't the motion that you're suggesting to put the bill on the watch list?
Okay, then I messed that up. Okay, we just got an update because I think I'm starting to run out of juice here.
Do you want a motion to keep it on the watch list?
Hold on a second. The reason I wanted to discuss this bill is because there was some language that was moving, which Mr. Polk and Mr. Burke updated us on. We don't need another motion. Sorry about that, everybody. Is there any?
I'd like to make a motion, though. I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion. We support this legislation. It increases access to care, and it includes some of our registration licensing categories. So I think it would be appropriate for us to do so. It gives more access to care to the consumer, and it allows for more multiple modalities to be used in the treatment of autism. So they still would have to have a scientific basis for support, but I think we should support the legislation personally.
I second that motion. This is Dr. Kasuga, and I am actually happy that we're watching bills that are going to be affecting individuals with developmental disabilities. I think that this will be helpful. I also think that this bill addressing the outdated terms is very, I think it's about time that we make those changes in the language of bills in California to remove outdated terms like MR and replacing it with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So with that part is also important to point out.
Thank you. Thank you both. So the first motion that we were talking about never actually became a motion because it wasn't seconded. So the actual motion is to change our position from watch to support for SB 805. It was moved by Dr. Phillips and second by Dr. Kasuga. Is there any other board comment? Dr. Phillips?
Sure. Hey, the only thing I was going to say is that the only way that a registered psychological associate at this point can do work within the purview of the pre-existing legislation is if they are doing a very particularized form of therapy. The only opposition to this bill comes from the organization that has kind of a stranglehold on that therapy. So I would say this would be having a positive impact on access to service and access to other modalities.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Okay, I see no other board comment. Can we open public comment?
Public comment on 13C7. This is Senate Bill 805. We have a motion on the floor. If you would like to make a comment on the motion, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. And our first request comes from Andrea Davis. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
To the board and the chair of the legislative committee, Dr. Cervantes and Dr. Phillips, for your comments. I'm Dr. Andrea Davis, a licensed psychologist, director at large on the California Psychological Association Division I board. And I asked the board I'm so happy there's a motion to support SB 805 at this time. Many families are seeking insurance coverage for their autistic children's needs, but they get denials simply because a psychologist assessed their child and recommended a developmental approach to behavioral health treatment. So SB 805 corrects that problem. It corrects those regulations that are blocking families from getting the treatment that they need for their children. Current law says insurance plans must cover behavioral health treatment, including applied behavior analysis and evidence-based behavior intervention programs. But because of wording, the only programs that are covered are those that use the ABA approach. So in reality, all other evidence-based treatment approaches to intensive behavioral health treatment for autism aren't covered by insurance. SB 805 is relevant to this board in that it would end existing inappropriate restriction of practice of psychological assistants, as they used to be called, who are offering behavioral health treatment for autism, to only the applied behavior analysis approach following 2011 SB 946 and the later AB 1047. SB 805 would ensure that psychological associates, with the new amendments, are allowed to provide supervised intensive behavioral health treatment for autism using whichever evidence-based treatment approach is within their scope of practice.
30 seconds.
And their scope of practice, as we know, is already defined by this board. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the AMA, have provided written guidance that all evidence-based approaches should be covered, not just ABA. So I encourage the board to go ahead and vote to support SB 805. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we're going to hear from Jen Alley. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone. Hold on just a moment. Jen, if you're available,
yes.
I'm going to ask you to restart. You were breaking up for just a moment.
So good afternoon. This is Jen Alley with CPA. I would just like to echo the comments made by Dr. Davis and appreciate the board's thoughtful discussion on moving this critical issue for families paying out of pocket for developmental approaches to treat their child's conditions. It really is a good solution to and a much needed solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that was our last request for public comment at the moment.
So our motion is to change our position from watch to support for SB 805. It was moved by Dr. Phillips and second by Dr. Katsuga. I see no other hands for board comment. So I'll go ahead, Ms.
Quick interruption, please.
Yes.
If Riscate could raise her hand so we could bring her back up to the panel.
It looks like I am in the panel.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, so Ms. Pruto, I think we got the gang's all here. We can call for a vote.
Thank you. Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu. Chief.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Riscate. Rogers. Aye. Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful discussion on the legislation. The next item is 13D, and this is legislative items for a future meeting. The board may discuss other items of legislation in sufficient detail to determine whether such items should be on a future board meeting agenda and/or whether to hold a special meeting of the board to discuss such items pursuant to Government Code Section 11125.4. Board members, do you have any items to discuss at a future meeting? I see no board comment. Can we open public comment?
We are now open for public comment on 13D, future legislative items. If you would like to make a comment or a suggestion, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, and we will take comments in the order that they are received. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Dr. Tate, is this appropriate time to move to item 14?
Yes, I was just going to say we are taking up items 14A and 14B. As I stated before, we're just doing action items. So Dr. Cervantes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So item 14 is the regulatory update, review, and consideration of additional changes. This item begins on page 985 of the combined packet. The first item is a memo summarizing the status of each regulatory package. Now we'll address the individual regulatory packages. Okay, so item A is the memo. I'm sorry, item A, there's a memo on page 987 of the combined packet. Mr. Curtis, can you give us a quick update on that? And there is also some language for us to consider.
Yes, so this was recently brought before the board and you guys approved language, but working with legal counsel at DCA, we've encountered some additional changes that we are suggesting for you to review. The first one is that there will be no fee charged in a psychological associate place themselves in an active. And also what the board needs to discuss and consider is how an individual is able to in an inactive status, whether cumulatively and whatnot. So that is what is up for you guys to discuss.
So in our memo on page 987, there's suggested language for a motion. Does that motion address the concerns that you just raised?
Yes, so the board is being asked to decide what limitation, if any, should be placed on how long a psychological associate registration can remain on an inactive status, and should the limit be a cumulative amount of time or broken into a limit for each occasion a psychological associate registration is placed on an inactive status, with a cumulative time limit stated for registrations placed on an active, or more than once.
So I see a hand and I can't see the name though.
It's Karen Halbo, your regulations counsel. And
Thank you.
I have to say this was the result of lawyers trying to think of everything that could be wrong or how something could be misconstrued. And I
Don't
was
scare
thinking
me.
of, sorry, well, I was just thinking of somebody who, starts to earn their hours and goes on inactive status or earns like 80% of their hours, goes on their inactive status for 6 years, and then comes back and does the remaining 20%. It was like you need to put a little bit of boundaries on what you're doing and decide what the board feels is appropriate. And I don't know if you can't be on an inactive status more than 2 years, more than 3 years. If someone has a baby, that's usually within a year. If you have a bad accident, I mean, there's just no boundaries on this. And staff said, really, the board has the experience to talk about this. And you could have somebody who has a child, is on inactive status, and then has to go on inactive status again because they're in a terrible accident. And so is there a time when they're on inactive status cumulative, or how is that calculated? That's what I was trying to get some restriction in the regulation so that it's clear.
I'm gonna open to the board because some have experience as practitioners who might have some thoughts on this.
This is Dr. Hardsheets, and I want to thank you, Ms. Halbo, for thinking of this, because in the licensure committee, we have to deal with these kinds of extensions that can happen, requests for extensions beyond what can be approved in the licensing unit. And so it's very helpful for us to think this through. I guess what I'm struggling with is coming up with an arbitrary number at this point. We could say you can't extend beyond some period of time. Is it 10 years? Because they're already given X number of years, so it can't be double that. And I would want to think it through a little bit more. I wonder if Ms. Chung could weigh in here too, or Dr. Tate or Ms. Nystrom, who are also on the licensure committee.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Hardsheets. This is Ms. Chung. I'm the licensing manager. So regarding this about inactive status, I think the goal here is to provide an avenue for existing psychological associate who are really running into some issues that cannot practice right now, but not have a way to do so right now other than canceling their registration to stop the clock. This time frame is really varies based on the individuals. Sometimes they could be coming back within 6 months because they might have resolved their issues. And then they are able to secure a primary supervisor to work with them. And then so they would be coming back for a registration after opting to cancel the registration at that time when they couldn't practice. And some other time we won't hear from them at all because they might have other focus in life that they have changed goals or things like that. So this is just some of the observation that we come across in our processing for these psychological associates. And I hope that would shed some light.
Yeah, it's good to give that history. Thank you. Dr. Tate and Ms. Nystrom, could you maybe give some thoughts based on what you've seen in the licensure committee?
It's difficult to put numbers
I agree
on these. Because typically I typically lean towards shorter versus longer, but there have been times that we've seen certain circumstances where I've definitely leaned towards longer timeframes. So in our committee, I think we've seen everything under the sun. So it's just I was curious to see how this discussion was going to go because I didn't know what numbers we were going to throw out to see.
And there's certainly always, if we do pick a number, there's certainly the opportunity to reconsider maybe or extend that through special circumstance and a review by the licensure committee.
Right.
Which
is what we're doing right now.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. What keeps coming up for me is that we don't want psychological associate positions to become careers. So, I want to think about that if we can identify a number. I don't know, Ms. Nystrom, how about you? What are your thoughts?
It'd be possible to do an annual review or a review every couple of years to see what the status is and see where the individual is at, because it could be very flexible, with reason. But I think to your point, I think what we see a lot is that we don't want it to become a career.
Yeah.
I appreciate the comments. I wonder if it may be appropriate that this item be considered by the licensure committee.
I think that would be a great idea for us, but our next meeting would probably not be until January.
Ms. Sorick, is there a consequence to that?
This package has been languishing for quite some time, and it is all ready to go except for these two provisions. And as you know, the process takes a minute for regulations. So if this is something that can be resolved, that would be great. It's my understanding, Ms. Chung, that the number of times we get a request like this is not all too frequent. But at some point, you would want for someone's skills to not go by the wayside if they've remained inactive for a period of time. You might want to consider looking at the model of supervised experience and that time limitation as a model to